Perfect. Okay. So I said we're mathematically 18 hours away from completing this stage 7 of 16. That's a typo of the Aragon client. So he posted a link to this Aragon GitHub page or forum, which basically gave the step-by-step breakdown of what syncing an Aragon client entails. And so when he told us that we're basically 6.5 million of 15.5 million blocks synced, I was like, okay, so we're 40 something percent done. And he told us that this is 7 hour old news. And I basically just reverse calculated, okay, how much time did that take? What would the total time take? So how much time is left remaining? And then from that, I looked at this and said, okay, stage 7 is here. What percentage of the overall syncing time does that take? And then I added the other percentages up, which, may not mathematically be correct because the other steps could take more or less time depending on like the rate at which it's downloaded. But if you consider the same rate through all the steps, I came up with a time of 11.25 days until Aragon completion, and that was at the time of this tweet. So that was 4 days ago. 4 days ago and 7 hours or something. So I was like, okay, that's what we got. It seems to match up with some other things. It's also conflicting with some other things. So, to each his own. But my next tweet following that was, if these clients are being worked on in series, which obviously means one after the other, I alluded to the fact in my, speculative nature that could mean end of February or March, V3. And if because we have 14 devs and some of it we're left to like just the will of how these things are downloaded. Like sometimes you just have to wait. Like we're syncing an entire EVM down to the transaction, and everything has to be validated and then indexed. So, and we have to do it on this execution layer and consensus layer or client, excuse me, level. So I was like, if they're being worked on in parallel or being synced in parallel, which I don't know if that's possible, it could be sometime in February. That's just my guess, because obviously if it takes 11 days to sync one client and it's the end of January, I'm speculating sometime February V3.
Well, so this is based on, so they're syncing the blockchain data. They're syncing at least the execution client on this side. There's also the beacon side, the beacon data and the validator data on the consensus clients. So I'm trying to think of, so what would be all the things they need if they were getting, let's say the code's ready. It sounds like the code is ready if they're using the clients to do the syncing.
That's what I'm hearing as well. Yeah.
If there's safe assumptions we can make, like the code is ready, now they're doing the syncing and they need to sync the execution and consensus clients. And we saw a few days ago, at least, that they were maybe halfway through syncing the execution client. And then we got the other consensus clients. I think they would take a shorter time. I'm going to guess they do. I think this is the bulk of it, is syncing the execution client and blockchain data. What else is there left to do?
I still like to imagine that Richard Hart is playing chess on he's playing 4D chess on a 2D checkerboard. Mm-hmm. So I like to just, think that, because I mean, if he's letting us know about the Aragon client, as you said, this could be the bulk of what we're waiting on. And he keeps saying that this checklist is getting shorter and shorter. So I would have to imagine that it wouldn't take as much time to do the consensus clients, or maybe those could already be done. I don't know which one has to be done first, or if there is a specific order that has to be done. I've never built a layer 1 before. Especially, I heard an analogy, and you know what? It's almost the same thing in business. When you try to change something in the middle of like doing it, it's like trying to use a new software to manage your clients or whatever. And this is just an example. You're basically swapping out the engine while you're still in the air, like flying. So, and this is a little bit different because we're taking a flying machine and building the same thing next to it. So but I mean, I have high hope. My conviction is very high. So I'm excited, but I'm sorry. What was the question?
So basically, yeah, let me mute for a sec. I was saying, like, what else is left? Because I'm thinking, okay, syncing the two clients, let's say, syncing all the blockchain data. And it sounded like last time one of the updates was they were working on Terraform, which is a cloud deployment configuration infrastructure as a code. So they basically wanted to get Terraform ready, like a Terraform config ready to make sure they could deploy in the cloud, because that's apparently where these nodes are going up. So I guess what else would we need before they're like testnet live, because they've been changing all the websites.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is it may have a lot, and what I'm hearing is it may have a lot to do with the front end, pointing all these front ends to the new. I mean, and Richard Hart said this as well. We took a BSC fork and then we wanted to completely switch scope and focus on an the ETH2 fork, which everything is completely different. So, we're at the point now, okay, we've got a lot done, but we have to make sure that I think there's definitely going to be a testnet v3. I've heard talks of people talking about maybe we just skip it. I don't think there's any chance, only because we found bugs on the last one. We're like, okay, and the improvements, and people were like, saying, hey, can we get a comma here? Or, whatever, these numbers are too long, just little things like that. And so, okay, those things have been worked through, but for every single interaction that takes place, there has to be a navigation to the correct location. And we're talking about the blockchain. And when you're talking about the blockchain, and we saw this, I don't want to, I hate like pointing out things that have happened, like just with Tantanomi and the Polygon.
Tantonomini.
Yeah, Tantanomi. Yeah, with the Polygon.
I say it in an Italian way. Tantonomini. Just in case he's watching, he can laugh now.
Anything can happen, and it's crazy because on the blockchain specifically, when you launch a project, it's pretty much like launching a rocket into outer space. But once you launch it, over it anymore. So you have to do the math up front so that you can hit the orbits, and then you got like you got to hit the gravitational force. Like a lot of things are going to happen in the future, and you have to be able to predict those things, do the math, and because you can't edit it once it's on the blockchain. You can edit the front ends, and like we said, most of the code is done, or I'm hearing that all the code is done, but it's just the front ends. So I think we're pretty.
I think that's the best news too. Is if we can extrapolate. Okay, the code must be done because they're syncing the chain. I think that's the key point here. Is like, okay, if you have any doubt the code is done, well, they're running it. The code, if you define the code as the clients that they forked in order to make PulseChain work for ETH 2.0, they're running that code. So, and they're syncing, and syncing usually means you're going to deploy. So that's why I think the hype is real. Yeah.
It's actually a great point. I've seen a lot of positivity on Twitter lately too.